being willing is better than being ready, because you don't know what's going to come when you start marriage. You don't know what trials are on the other side. But if you're like, hey, I'm just willing to learn, I'm willing to go through this, versus someone who's saying like, oh, I'm ready for marriage, but this better not happen, that better not happen, you better not change, you better not, lose your job or anything like that. And it's like, hey, I don't have any control over those things. But so I would say willingness is better than being ready.
What's up, fam? Welcome back to our channel. My name is Tim. This is my beautiful wife, Pauline, and you're tuning in to another episode of the W Podcast, where you get wisdom in the word with the
Wheeler.
Hey, so we are so excited to have you back this week. How you feeling? I see you're in a good mood.
Yeah.
For those watching on YouTube, could see how she was trying to imitate somebody.
Somebody very special.
Right. Shout out to everybody that watches on YouTube, by the way. If you've been watching us for years, why don't you just go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that like button if this video is valuable to you, because it definitely helps YouTube show more people this video for sure. But this week we're doing... What are you laughing at?
You.
What about me?
You just love you so much.
Okay. So this week somebody's in a good mood tonight. Praise God.
You already said that.
Yeah, I'm saying it again.
Yeah, you're trying to say nice normally way. I'm like very gloomy.
That's the nice way of
saying I'm being annoying.
Yeah, there you go.
I want to.
So we're doing a Q&A this week, which is we're answering multiple questions.
Yeah.
And we're really excited about it because this way we can answer a lot of questions and still go in depth with them. But sometimes there's topics that y'all ask us and it's like, this don't really make sense to just do one video on.
Like a hot seat type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So in this first clip, we're going to be talking about what do you do when you date a man who doesn't know how to emotionally communicate how he's feeling.
Which sounds like almost all guys.
Yeah, but
very relatable.
There's some guys who are more emotionally
further along than others
than their women. Sometimes.
Okay, it's anything's possible.
Yeah, some hard-nosed woman.
The majority is.
Would you say that I didn't know how to communicate my feelings when we first got together?
Absolutely. I think that
absolutely.
Sometimes I thought that, like, does this guy even have emotions when it comes to certain topics? Not in general, but just, like, certain topics. Man. So, yeah, certain things, like, do you care? Like,
I mean, a lot of men weren't trained to communicate their feelings. Like,
so
honestly,
you're saying women are trained to communicate their feelings?
I'm not talking about women. I'm talking about men. For a lot of men, like when you were asking me questions about how I feel, like that was the first time in my life anybody was really asking me, like, how do you feel about this? That was hard for me to communicate that. So we're going to unpack that. I don't want to give away too much, but we're going to talk about how do you handle that when you're in a relationship and you feel like your man isn't really communicating. And then also, I want to touch on, and we will touch on in this video, what do you do when somebody you're dating, male or female, says something that may be hurtful? How do you know if they went too far? How do you know if it was just, hey, let them repent, nobody's perfect, move on? We're going to unpack that in this clip. Let's go. What if someone you're dating or interested in was disrespectful, but they didn't mean to be? To them, it was just honesty. But to me, it was a poor choice of words. I still have feelings for him, but I'm not sure if I want to give him another chance.
So they're broken up?
It's not clear. It sounds like they're not even really dating. It sounds like they may be
someone you are dating,
or they may not be boyfriend or girlfriend. They may just be going out on like dates and stuff. And this person's like, I'm still interested in him, but
did I say anything disrespectful to you while we were dating?
Not that I remember, but I know I said something on our first date.
But I don't remember what it was.
We don't remember what I said, but I rember saying something on our first date that like it changed the mood for a little bit.
Some things in marriage you've said.
Of course you did. There was the energy changed on the first date when I said something. It was maybe a bad joke. I don't know. But like Pauline said, obviously it wasn't that deep because we're sitting here right now. But I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier. Like, how much do you like this person? You say you like them. I think it's a couple things. How much do you like them? But also, like, what did they say? Because, like, maybe they really didn't say anything that was like
overreacting.
Yeah, that was like that deep. Now, we're not saying that your feelings aren't valid for you to feel the way you feel, but maybe they said something like, "Oh, like chocolate pudding is bad.
But
like to
like
you,
that shirt doesn't look good on you.
But like to you, chocolate pudding is everything, and now you upset. But most people wouldn't be upset about that. Reason I'm bringing that up is because if there's somebody you really do like, and you are still interested, it may be worth it to talk to some people close to you that you trust, that have wisdom. Be like, hey, am I overreacting about this? I appreciate you coming to us, but we don't know specifically what was said, so it's a little hard to really answer this accurately. What would you say?
Yeah, the first part of this question, how do you determine what's redeemable and what isn't?
Yeah.
Very deep, very big question that I think you could have possibly meant like what's forgivable and unforgivable. Somebody could also interpret that as like what would you tolerate and what would you not tolerate? So it could all come back down to boundaries, if we're being honest, which is like why we teach on boundaries and why that's a core lesson in just dating universities, because a lot of things come down to boundaries. So for you, if he or she said something that was like, they crossed the line, like whatever the boundary was for you, like I don't like when people talk about my parents, or he had a really bad joke about your mom, like obviously that's really disrespectful. It really just depends on like what your boundaries are. If he made a remark about your appearance when you were wearing, like that could be really hurtful too. And like sometimes guys say things that they think are funny, and like it's funny to them, but it's actually crude, like as for a woman. And some guys just don't have that level of sensitivity yet. And it, like with maturity, it will come.
It does take time, like not even just with like the joke stuff, but just that sensitivity piece
and learning what people, what they're offended by.
You helped me grow emotionally a lot, especially when we first started dating. I remember you would ask me, how do you feel about that? No one had ever asked me that. I grew up with all brothers.
Yeah.
All my friends were guys. Like I never had nobody ask me, how do you feel? So that's something I had to work on when we were first dating, asking her that. Like I would never ask her, what do you feel about that?
It's like true.
Yeah. Like
just a fact. Like,
so
focus on the fact.
All that to say, there should be some grace you extend your man, especially given their context. Like they just really may not have had an opportunity to learn how to be emotionally in tune. And I'll say this, it's really important to make sure that you remember we got to teach people how to love us.
Yeah.
Because if this is the first time something like this happened, this is an opportunity for y'all relationship to grow, take another step. Obviously, depending on how deep it was, like if they said something completely out of line, that's different. But if it was something that was just like it wasn't the greatest thing, then that's an opportunity for you to say like, hey, I really don't like when when words are said like this, or when this is communicated, and you can explain why if you know, and then that person gets a chance to learn you,
right?
And then now you have an opportunity to get to know them, because now you get to see how do they respond,
right, to that.
Do they respond well to that? Do they joke like that again with you?
Right.
Then you'll know, nah, this ain't it.
Yeah, because a big part of this, one piece that we don't know with this question is like, what did he say after he, you confronted him? Did you confront him at all about what he said that offended you or that you found disrespectful? Because if he just said something and then you were just like, keep that kind of like registered in the back of your mind of like kind of counting wrongs, that's not the way you want to go. You do want to have a direct conversation, whether it be on the spot or like the day after, and say, hey, I'm not really sure what you meant by this statement, and like restate the statement so he knows what it is you're referring to, and say like, yeah, that actually really bothered me. It actually made me feel disrespected. And then hopefully he'll say, oh, wow, I didn't mean to make you feel that way. I was just joking, or I was just, I was trying to make you laugh or whatever. And then you say, yeah, that actually, that I didn't really find that funny. But I'm glad to know that you didn't mean to hurt my feelings, that you weren't trying to be mean. Next time I would prefer this, and give him an example. And you're not being controlling, saying like, talk to me in this way only. It's just more of like, hey, like if you want to make it, I'm fine with joking around, because you don't want to come across that you're like, no jokes, like I'm so serious. But you can, say like, I'm fine joking around. I'm fine with you making fun of, my hair or my dog or whatever, but just please don't talk about my this, or at least not in that way, because X, Y, and Z. I'm sensitive about it. This actually happened to me when I was growing up. You know, like kind of explain why so that they can get to know you better. And then hopefully they can understand, like, oh, this is really serious.
Yeah.
Like,
and hopefully they'll respond like, oh, I'm so sorry. Because like,
right.
I've had situations with my own brother. I'm sure on the other side too, where I said a joke about something that happened to him or that was about him or whatever. And he was like, yo, that really,
It's not funny.
That I don't like joking about that. And
Right.
we joke about everything. But in that moment, I apologize. I was so sorry because I didn't realize that
Right.
was like something that was deep for him.
Right. But it's, in regards to the first part of the question of like what's redeemable, what's forgivable, really that's not for us to decide. Because when I first read it, I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds like a heaven and hell issue. And I was like, oh no, I don't know.
Burn up.
But I mean, obviously God forgives all. So I mean, you could say anything is forgivable. Because also you have to ask yourself, this is like, it's not really, and I'm only harping on this because of the language that this person used in the question. You can forgive, and you should. God commands us to forgive everyone. 7 times 77 times. That's what it says, right?
7 times 70.
7 times 70. Why did I say 77? I'm sure that works too if you do that. But yeah, like God commands us to forgive endlessly. And even if you decide not to move forward to be in a relationship with somebody anymore, you should not hold anything in your heart against them as far as like, yeah, he said this to me and he's disrespectful and I'll never forgive him for that. And he's a jerk and he's scum because of that. And that's why we're not together anymore. Like that should not be your heart. It should be more of like, oh, wow. If you do share this with him and kind of follow the steps that we gave and he doesn't respond in a gracious, loving way, that kind of just lets you know that person's maturity, and it lets you know that you all aren't on the same level and you all basically shouldn't be together. And that's okay to learn. That's why you're dating, is to figure out, is this my person? Is it not? And once you find out the answer, either yes or no, you move on. But you shouldn't ever hold anything in your heart and say like, oh, like that person is this or that, and kind of like judge their spirituality and like judge their stance with the Lord.
All right, fam. We hope you enjoyed that clip. Remember, nobody is a finished product. Right. Lord knows Pauline was not a finished. No, I'm just
Lord
kidding.
knows you are not.
But if you meet somebody and they're willing to grow in the area, because I think that's something that I try
willingness
to do.
It's important.
There was a lot of areas that I was jacked up in when we were dating, and I still have work to do, obviously, like anybody else. But I was willing to show you that I wasn't going to fail all my classes in college.
Oh, man.
So that is something that's okay, as long as they're willing to show that they are willing to do the necessary things to grow.
I think that's huge, because a lot of people, when you're engaged, a lot of people will ask you like, oh, are you ready to get married? Or even when you're about to become a parent, are you ready for this? And like, who's ever ready for such a large change? And if you think you're ready, then you're already being lied to, or you're already lying to yourself.
Yeah.
But I think the major thing, with that is not just being willing is better than being ready, because you don't know what's going to come when you start marriage. You don't know what trials are on the other side. But if you're like, hey, I'm just willing to learn, I'm willing to go through this, versus someone who's saying like, well, I'm ready for marriage, but this better not happen, that better not happen, you better not change, you better not lose your job or anything like that. And it's like, hey, I don't have any control over those things. But so I'd say willingness is better than being ready.
That's good. That's really good. So in this next clip that we're about to go into, we're going to break down money in marriage. Now, we all know that money is very important to any marriage, but please, especially for the fellas, please be careful that you're not allowing money to dictate the pace of your relationship more than you're allowing God to order your steps in your relationship. And we're going to unpack that in this video. Check this out.
We've talked about marriage, and it seems to be a topic up in the air. He says he wants to marry me, but we never seem to get anywhere past that. In his head, he wants to have a full-on career before marriage. No apartment to start off with. He wants to already have a house, etc. I understand he wants us to be stable and taken care of before him, but it makes me think I might not be getting the ring anytime soon. He always says on God's time, but I tell him God isn't going to come down and tell you to propose. God will take care of us. But anyway, any thoughts on this? Am I being too pushy? I struggle with temptation with said ex, so I know I don't want to fall into that with my man, but I don't want to also play with fire if we have to wait too long to get married.
I don't think you're being too pushy at all. You've been dating, was this the one? 7 months? I don't think that's too pushy, especially depending on how old y'all are. Like, a lot of relationships, the older you are, the quicker it seems the relationships go. So I don't think you're being too pushy, especially because it's not like you're saying, at least you didn't write, that you're saying you need to marry me today, or I need to be
like
married.
An ultimatum.
Yeah, it's not an ultimatum. You're just asking, hey, like, what are your plans? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Actually, we encourage women, if they're not getting those clear answers, to ask questions. I think, unfortunately, a lot of men can fall into this situation where, and their hearts are in the right place, so no judgment most of the time. Their hearts are in the right place of, I want to provide, I want to make sure I have a certain lifestyle, and obviously I 100% respect that. But I think sometimes we can use that, it comes in two ways. Sometimes that can be a scapegoat, unintentionally, unconsciously sometimes, they're not really ready to get married, so they're using this, oh, I want to have this in place.
But if it's always like a moving finish.
Right, it's always like a moving, I gotta have a house, I gotta have this type of job. And it's like, alright, I know those things ain't really coming soon, and it gives me more time to continue dating you because I love you, but marriage scares me. That could be one. I'm not saying that's your boyfriend, but that could be an option. The second thing is, some dudes really just have bad intentions, or their intentions aren't clear in the sense that they like you, but they don't really want to marry you. They like the company. They just want to
leading on,
right, kind of leading you on. And I'm not saying again that that's your boyfriend, but for someone that's in a situation like this, that could be the case. And here's what I suggest. And I know that you said, I believe that like y'all have had some conversations, but they haven't gone anywhere. I would suggest you talk to him and say, hey, next week, the end of this month, whatever, let's sit down. I want to have an honest conversation about marriage, and be upfront and say, hey, this is not going to be a conversation of me bombarding you, why haven't I gotten a ring yet?
Yeah.
This is going to be a conversation of us learning each other, and I want to be able to share my heart about what I feel about marriage and like where I would like us to be, and then I want you to be able to share your heart on where you are. And this should really be a safe conversation, maybe at a neutral site like a Panera Bread or something like that, and maybe you all have time to pray about it before you even go into the meeting individually. And really, the point of this conversation is to share your hearts. So there's no judgment. Whatever he says is how he feels. Whatever you say is how you feel. But the goal is to be able to understand where this person is.
Right.
Because right now, I don't feel like you really know where he is. Obviously, he's saying, like, I don't want to get married because I want to have a house and all this stuff. But this conversation needs to be why.
Right.
I need to understand why do you need that?
Yeah.
Why do you feel that? It's because you want to learn his heart. Maybe because of his background. Maybe he saw his parents struggling and he doesn't want to go through that. And you just never know what fears people are going through. But this could be such a healthy conversation for you to get to know him. Like, okay, that's why you think that way. And then this could be an opportunity for you to be able to share your heart and be, hey, this is why I want to get married.
Right.
Because I don't want to fall into sin. Because I love you. Because I want to start building my life together.
Right.
And I think that's so key, because he may not really understand how important it is for you all to have some type of clear direction towards marriage, because maybe you haven't been able to fully articulate it. Maybe you're still thinking about it yourself, but when you come to that meeting, you'll have had time to really sit down and say, this is what I need, this is why I need it. And then after you leave that conversation, let's be honest, y'all, we're all grown, all right? Dating is about evaluation, and I know it's hard because you're talking to somebody, those heartstrings start coming in, but at the end of the day, we can't be with people who aren't willing to move forward. Yeah. And if you're dating somebody and you have a conversation with them and you realize that you all are not close to that marriage timeline, and you've been dating for a reasonable amount of time where you should be beginning to have those type of conversations, I'm not saying you need to break up in that moment, but what I am saying is I would definitely advise getting some mentors involved, getting pastors involved to sit down with you both, because it's always good when you can have another man look another man in the eye and be like, bro, I 100% get it, but let me tell you that is not what matters the most when it comes to a marriage. Because we know people, we all have known people who had all the money in the world and could move into a house, and their marriage didn't last 72 days. Yeah. Like, that's just
Right,
what
that's
it
how
is.
it's gonna make your marriage strong.
What makes your marriage strong is character, commitment
Yeah.
to each other, the willingness to put in the hard work, the willingness to forgive, foundation on Christ. Like, all of those things will bring the marriage together, not money.
Right.
And unfortunately, money
Or milestones.
money sometimes can cloud our judgment. You know,
100%.
I've heard a pastor say, like, money, everybody thinks it's like the number one thing, but they're like, money's not even in your top three. Because if I told you I would give you $1 million today, but you were going to die tomorrow,
Yeah.
would you still take the $1 million?
Right.
If I told you I was going to give you $1 million today, but your mom was going to pass away, would you still take it? Like,
Right.
no, you wouldn't, because that's not the number one thing, even though our minds sometimes try to make us think it is. And I just think maybe being able to have somebody else, because he may not be able to hear this from you.
Right.
Because all he may hear is you pressure him for a ring, even though that's not your heart. But that could just be how he takes it because of whatever. So I think sometimes when you can involve wise counsel, that really helps be able to help them see it from a different perspective that's not you.
Yeah. So good. So really, I love the suggestion of like having an intentional meeting so that no one's blindsided and he can feel prepared. I would also, I mean, even just add to that point, like really what you want is context. So like, because I think for as women, sometimes we struggle. Like, we don't mind waiting or, like, we don't mind things not being on our timeline, but we need a timeline. So, even if it's like, you know, okay, you don't want to get married this year, I understand that. Are you willing to get engaged? Like, kind of let me know. Like, give me some type of, you know, idea. And, you know, I'm sure him saying things like, oh, on God's timing, like, that's super, super vague. And, like, yeah, and, like, just like you said, it doesn't... Depending on where he is in life, like, getting a house, like, that may not be for, like, 10 years.
And can I just say, maybe you were able to speak on this, that I didn't even, like, really get to process, like, his dad passing in August, like, how much of an impact that could be having on, like, his situation.
Well, right, and that's why you want more context. Like, you just really want to know, like, okay, like, in general, like, do you want to get married? Yes, you do. Okay, great. Like, you respect and honor the institution of marriage as something that you want to participate in. Like, do you want to participate with me? Okay, great. Like, when do you want to do that? Like, we have to work through all the different layers of this. But I would say just keep an open hand. I know that you said you're very certain that, like, this person is from God. And I think, you know, I've definitely been in a situation where I felt like somebody was, like, the one for me or the person that I wanted to be with. But it takes more than love and, you know, kind of having a good relationship to enter into marriage with somebody, just like you spoke about, like lifestyles and like just different things aligning, and timing is a big part of that. Like, some people say, like, right person, wrong time is the wrong person, and I hope that you're not like hearing me of like, okay, she just wants us to break up, because that's not the case at all. But I do think that it's really hard to hear when you're only listening for certain things. So like, he may have been giving you clues the whole time. And yes, he does need to be clear with you about, you know, a timeline and kind of like what the next year, 6 months, year of his life is going to look like, or what he wants it to look like. But I also think, too, that, you know, love is blind, love is deaf. Like, we miss out on a lot of things and a lot of clues. That's why it's always good to have community. But you also need to be open to hearing what your community has to say. If you are pretty much like, nope, this is the guy, we're going to get married as soon as possible. Because I know that you mentioned that because of your own past and your own context, like, you don't want to fall into sin, which is obviously a great, you know, thing to not want to do. It's a good heart, but also, like, just, that doesn't mean that marriage is right now. Like, sometimes we want to just get a quick fix to things. Like, marriage doesn't heal lust. Marriage doesn't cure porn addiction. It only magnifies problems that we already have. So it's going to be really, really tough. And I want you to go into marriage with proper expectations. I want you to be prepared. I know that you're not talking about running down the aisle and skipping premarital counseling and all those different things, but you also don't want to drag a man down the aisle. So, and I know that that's not what you want to do, but, or specifically with this guy, but I also think that, you know, having these courageous conversations, you know, as Tim mentioned with, you know, you guys sitting down at a Panera or something like that, like, you have to be ready for whatever his response is going to be or not be. Because if you have this meeting, that doesn't mean he's like, all right, cool, like, I'm going to make this timeline up now, because he really may not be ready for that. I don't know. And like, how this whole process kind of goes will tell you a little bit about his leadership and just where he is, and you asking yourself, like, do I want to follow somebody who's, you know, this is where they are in their life, and that's fine, you know, to grow with people and things like that. But just keep an open hand and open heart towards the Lord. If he brought this person into your life, like, he will work it out. And if he brings this person out of your life, he'll bring somebody else in.
Yeah, and by no means are we saying that your boyfriend or anybody else in this situation is a bad guy or is leading you on, because they're not clear on where they are right now. But what we are saying is, it's kind of a red flag if you say, I want to have this healthy conversation and they're pushing you off. Then I would have a problem, because I'm just trying to seek clarity. I'm trying to help us connect with each other on a deeper level. And you not wanting to have a conversation is hindering us from that. To me, that's a problem. All right. So remember, asking your partner questions about what their timeline is for marriage does not make you pushy. But there is a way to do it that's tactful and that doesn't allow you to come across as a nag. So you just want to keep that in mind. But in this next clip, we're going to break down, how do you identify if you're the problem? Like, some of you are doing a great job. You're not doing anything wrong. It's just not your time to get married or be in a relationship. We learned this Sunday at our church about due season. And sometimes it's just not your season for whatever reason.
It's for the best.
Whatever you want. Maybe you're in a relationship and you're dating right now, but maybe you don't have the car you want, the house you want, the job you want, whatever it may be. It may not be due season, and that's okay. But some of us, we may be doing some things that could be
not doing things,
preventing us from doing what God may want to do in our life, which could be a relationship right now. And we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about what happens if you're only attracting toxic people. Is that your fault? Is it your fault that you just bad and all the bad boys want to come at you? Or is there something you could be doing? We're going to unpack that and more in this clip. Check it out. Is there something wrong with me?
Oh my gosh.
That's how they
There's
start.
something wrong with all of us.
I seem to be attuned, this is interesting, to a certain type of man. One who radiates masculinity.
Ooh.
When I look back to the men I've dated before, it follows a pattern of sorts. In addition to that, it's like guys are too scared to approach me. And the ones who do, I'm not attracted to at all. Not intellectually, no chemistry, no compatibility. Am I doing something wrong?
This is a very complex question. So let's start with the easy parts. There's something wrong with you. Yes, there's something wrong with all of us. Nobody's perfect. We all have things to work on. But whatever is wrong with you...
You've been very encouraging tonight.
I know. Whatever is wrong with you is not going to stop what God has for you. So if you feel like your problem is that you're intimidating to men, or whatever the case is, some of the things that you had mentioned down below, guys are scared to talk to you, that's not going to stop what God has for you. If that is true. I don't know if that's true, because I don't know who this is and all the different, we don't have a lot of context to what's going on in your life or what has gone on. But I think that it's so easy when things are not going right in our lives or going the way that we want them to go. And I do this too. It's so easy for us to want to find like something to blame, or, oh, this isn't happening for me because I look like this, or because I'm overweight, or I'm underweight, or I'm too tall, or I'm too short, or whatever. And it's just, it's honestly an attack of the enemy to try to say, again, this is your fault. You're not good enough. And that's just not true. It's not true at all. Like, the Lord made you. You're beautifully and wonderfully made in his eyes. Are you perfect? Absolutely not. But you are a child of God, and you are constantly growing and changing and evolving, like all of us are. People who are married are not perfect. They're just married. That's really all it is. And I think that the closer you get to married people, I don't know obviously how old you are and like what your friend groups look like, but as you get closer to married people, you realize like, oh, like my friends are just as jacked up as I am. It's just that their time came before me, necessarily to get married or not. So I would say stop blaming yourself if, your love life doesn't look the way you want it to look, like you want to be married or you want to be engaged, or you want to be in a relationship right now and you're not. because like you everywhere you go, there you are. So even when you get in a relationship and you get married, you're still going to be working on things. That's why it's so important. And shout out to all of you all in JDU who are working on yourselves and who are putting in the work in a lot of different ways, even outside of just participating in JDU. To grow your self-awareness, because you're building muscles right now that you are going to use when you're dating, when you're engaged, when you're married, when you're a parent, like when you're a grandparent. It will never ever end. So yeah, don't blame yourself. There's whatever's wrong with you, even if you work on that and you like accomplish that, you're gonna find something else that's you're gonna work on until the day you die. So I wouldn't fixate on that. And as far as like the guys that do approach you not being attractive to you, and then the guys that you do like not being attracted to you, it's kind of interesting because that kind of contradicts the first part of the question, don't you think? When I look back at the men I dated before, it follows a pattern of sorts. Like I tune to a certain type of man. Does that mean that I'm attracted to a certain type of men? Men that radiate masculinity?
I took that as, to me, I could have read this wrong, but how I read it was the type of man that comes after me is usually a toxic man.
Oh,
that's how I took it. Because
interesting.
normally when you hear somebody talking about masculinity, it's like
Macho.
yeah, like a bad thing.
True.
That's how I read it. I could be reading it wrong.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not really clear on that part. But yeah.
Because the way she started it, is there something wrong with me?
Right.
I attract this type of man.
You're right. Okay. Yeah, I mean it's interesting. I mean, there definitely is something to say about patterns. So if you have the past 5 years dated 5 different people and they're all kind of like the same, and of course a lot of people have been in that kind of like endless cycle where like I'm dating the same guy just with a different name. That's that's not unusual at all. A lot of us have been through that. So what do you do to break the cycle? You try something new. So if you find yourself kind of, these are the type of guys that I attract, these type of guys that are interested in me, the first part is to, number one, I say be okay being single. Like I'm not gonna date just to date and like date guys that are toxic just because I don't want to be alone. But then also you probably have to try something new, because I don't know what you feel like, what type of like energy or whatever you're putting out there that's attracting these toxic guys. But I would have to define the difference between like what I'm looking for and what I'm not, and then like be more attuned to what I'm looking for.
Yeah, the reason I said that's what I think she was saying, because this person went on to say, in addition to that, it's like guys are scared to talk to me or approach me. Mm-hmm. And I would say, I don't know if it's that guys are scared to approach you. It could be guys don't want to. And that could be for a myriad of different reasons.
Yeah.
Whether it's the energy you give off, like if you're giving off mean girl vibes, or it's if you're going to a church and it's a church setting, maybe it could be the way you're dressing. There could be a lot of different things that's like, I'm not interested in pursuing someone that does this or looks like that or whatever. So one thing that I consider be helpful, because when you're doing these anonymous things, you don't get the details that you need to fully give a good answer. But if you're really worried about, am I doing something wrong? I would go to somebody, especially hopefully you're in a church, you're connected to somebody that you can walk up to who's married, and ask them this question yourself that you trust. I wouldn't say ask your friends, because most likely your friends are like you. Yeah. A lot of times people's friends are like them. So if you're having this problem, a lot of your friends may be having similar problems as well. So that's why it'd be better to go somebody who's not necessarily in your friend circle, but you trust, and that's cool. And maybe they may be able to give you a different vantage point. They'll be like, yeah, I noticed the way that you talk to so-and-so, like that isn't best, or it comes across this way. I know you may not mean to come across this way, but this is how it's come across. And then you'll be able to have a better sense if it is you, or if it's just you've had a few weird interactions with some people.
Yeah, I mean, mind renewal is something that is always necessary when we're trying to do something new. Like if you're trying to come out of a certain cycle or certain season or certain habit that you have, really asking the Lord, like, Lord, help me to see myself the way that you do. Help me to see men the way that you do, or a specific man that you may be interested in. Excuse me. And that may help you approach them differently, because you may, I don't know, obviously, like your past and everything that has gone on, but a lot of times it's like these really deep-seated things of like, oh, a certain man looks weak to me, or it doesn't look masculine to me if he doesn't have this or have that. So a lot of times we have to really redefine and renew our minds about how we see people, how we see ourselves, in order for our what is this called, our words and our actions to change. Like sometimes we want our actions to change but our minds are not changed, and that's not how it works. It goes your mind, your mouth, then your actions. So I would start with there, like asking the Lord about that. I'd also be, like, and this might sound kind of like trivial, but it's real, is rethinking and evaluating what you're watching, what you're listening to, what you're reading, what are you feeding yourself with, that's affecting how you view yourself and how you view other men, because, those things do have an impact on us as well.
All right, fam, we hope you enjoyed this week's episode. We unpacked a lot, from everything from how do I know if I'm the problem to making sure that my money is not guiding me.
Yeah, that's really hard, that one.
To even making sure that we're patient with our men who may not have known how to communicate in the first place. They are
willing to learn.
Come on now. So we'll see y'all next week on the W Podcast.
Bye.
Thanks for watching this video.
To get more Christian relationship advice, subscribe to our channel.
And make sure you check out our other videos as well.